Something isn't just wrong, it feels deliberately hidden. A quiet storm is building behind palace walls, and this time, the whispers aren't staying whispers, they're turning into sharp, relentless questions. Lady C has stepped forward, and what she's hinting at is not just another passing controversy, it's something that touches the very core of royal legitimacy, of truth, of identity itself. And Meghan, her reaction isn't calm. It's not measured. It's intense. Almost too intense. Why now? Why this reaction? And more importantly, what exactly has been uncovered that's making everything feel so dangerously unstable?
I have spoken to doctors, nurses, many women who've given birth to children, and all of them say the same thing. Those photographs of Meghan and the way the baby bump performed are totally unexpected, and they're not aware of any baby, any pregnant woman who is genuinely pregnant having her bump perform the way Meghan's has performed.
And that's where it begins. Not with answers, but with a shift in tone, a shift in energy. Something major is stirring, and insiders are no longer pretending otherwise. There's a growing sense that this isn't just about rumors anymore, it's about patterns, about details that don't quite align, about pieces of a puzzle that when placed side by side start to reveal something unsettling. Lady C isn't hinting quietly either, she's stepping forward boldly, laying out claims that are forcing people to stop, rewind, and look again. Because when reactions become stronger than the accusations themselves, you have to ask, what's being protected?
New question marks over the veracity of Princess Lilibet's birth certificate, and it also raises serious concerns about whether Meghan Markle has been honest with the public about her daughter's birth.
And now the focus sharpens. Suddenly, it's not just chatter, it's scrutiny. Real scrutiny. The kind that digs into documents, numbers, official records. The kind that doesn't go away easily. Fresh doubts are circling around Princess Lilibet's birth certificate, and what seemed like a minor technical detail has exploded into something much bigger. A number. Just a number. But that number is now at the center of a storm, because numbers don't lie unless something or someone has made them.
I want you to pay attention to this number right here. The 105-202, the 105-2021-163-206. That number is incredibly important. This is directly from the government's website, guys. And this is reviewing a birth certificate birth area code. Okay, and then it tells you what it is. It's the first three digits. You remember the 105 that you saw? Is the birth area code. It tells you in which state the child was born. We have seen that in Lilibet's birth certificate. It states that her number is 105. So surely that is California, right? It turns out that California is 104. And let's not forget that Archie is 6th in line to the throne and Lilibet is 7th in line to the throne, which is insane.
And this is where the tension spikes. That number, 105, it doesn't match. It simply doesn't match what official data says it should. California's code, 104. So what is 105 doing there? How does a detail so basic, so fundamental slip through on a document this important? And suddenly, the questions don't feel small anymore. They feel structural. They feel foundational. Because Archie and Lilibet aren't just private individuals, they're tied to the royal line of succession. That changes everything. That raises the stakes. That turns a possible error into something that demands answers. But here's where it gets even more uncomfortable. Critics are no longer just pointing at one inconsistency, they're pointing at several patterns. Repeated irregularities, and yes, some say it could all be a simple administrative mistake. But others, they're not convinced, because when mistakes start stacking up, they stop looking like mistakes. They start looking like something else.
Even if you put the questions of whether Meghan actually bore these children to one side, Harry has now admitted on the record that he will not allow them ever to come to the United Kingdom. Well, some royal families would not allow young princes or princesses to be in the line of succession if they were not educated in the country of which one day they might serve.
And then comes the twist that no one was expecting. The possibility that the code doesn't just mismatch, but points somewhere entirely different. Colorado, not California. That single shift doesn't just raise eyebrows, it rewrites the entire narrative. Because Meghan and Harry had already shared a detailed story, a hospital, a timeline, personal moments. It all felt complete, finished, closed. But now it feels reopened, re-examined, questioned. And the deeper you go, the more layers appear. The medical professional involved reportedly stepping away soon after. The lack of clear, consistent verification compared to other royal births. The silence where clarity is usually expected. Each detail on its own may be explainable, but together they create something heavier, something harder to ignore.
All other royal babies in the line of succession have had their births signed off. Princess Eugenie, Princess Beatrice, Sarah York, Diana Wales, Catherine Wales, you name it. Everybody knows where the babies came from, at what time, with proof. The only two children that there is no proof for is Prince Archie Bunker and Princess Lily. You better hope that she's really entitled to what they claim she's entitled to.
Royal births are supposed to be airtight, confirmed, documented beyond doubt. That's the standard, that's the expectation. And when that expectation isn't met, people don't just notice, they question loudly, relentlessly. And now those questions are multiplying. Some say it's confusion, miscommunication, a storm built on speculation. But others, they're asking whether key details have been left unexplained, intentionally or otherwise. And then the conversation shifts again, this time into something even more uncomfortable. Visual inconsistencies, changing appearances, hair colors that don't match from one image to another, faces that don't feel consistent. And suddenly, people aren't just questioning documents, they're questioning reality itself. Who are we actually seeing? Are these genuine glimpses or carefully managed fragments? The silence around these questions, it's not calming anything. It's doing the opposite. It's making everything louder. Because when there's no clear reference point, no consistent image, no solid anchor, people start filling the gaps themselves. And those gaps, they're growing. And just when it feels like the tension might settle, it doesn't. It tightens. Because now the implications stretch far beyond one document, one child, one detail. They touch the line of succession, the structure of the monarchy, the expectations of transparency. And suddenly this isn't just a family story, it's a public one. And the most unsettling part, nothing has officially changed. Positions remain, titles remain, records remain. But the questions, they don't go away. They linger, they grow, they evolve. And right now it feels like we're only seeing the surface. Because behind every answer that isn't given, another question is forming. But here's where the story stops being just about documents, codes, or even questions and starts feeling like something much bigger, something far more calculated, far more deliberate. Because once doubt enters the conversation around royal legitimacy, it doesn't stay contained. It spreads, quietly at first, then all at once. And now the conversation is no longer just circling around Archie and Lilibet, it's circling around the entire structure that holds the monarchy together. Because if even one detail feels uncertain, people start asking what else isn't as solid as it seems. And suddenly the focus shifts to visibility, or more precisely, the lack of it. The absence of clear, consistent public proof compared to other royal children is being discussed more openly now than ever before. Not whispered, debated, analyzed, pulled apart. Because royal births have always followed a pattern, a system of confirmation, documentation that leaves no space for interpretation. And here, people are noticing that the pattern feels broken, or at the very least, different. And different in a system built on tradition is enough to spark suspicion. Some voices are trying to slow things down, insisting this is all being exaggerated, that confusion has been mistaken for controversy. But others aren't backing off. They're pointing out that when something is clear, it doesn't require this much explanation. It doesn't generate this many conflicting narratives. And it definitely doesn't create this level of emotional reaction, because let's be honest, that reaction is what's really catching attention now. Meghan's response isn't being described as neutral or dismissive. It's being described as intense, defensive, almost reactive in a way that feels disproportionate. And that raises a question that no one can ignore. What exactly is being reacted to? Then the conversation takes an even sharper turn, sliding into territory that feels almost too sensitive to touch. The idea of identity, of resemblance, of genetics. Observers are openly saying there's no consistent visual reference point, that the children's appearances seem to shift depending on the image, the angle, the moment. And while these claims remain disputed, the fact that they're being made at all and repeated is what's fueling the fire. Because once people start questioning something as fundamental as identity, the discussion becomes impossible to contain. It becomes emotional, personal, and deeply divisive. And just as that tension peaks, another layer quietly slips in, the royal line of succession. Because this isn't just about curiosity, it's about consequence. Positions in that line are not symbolic. They carry weight, historical, constitutional, even global implications. And that's why some voices are now calling for more transparency, arguing that when public roles are involved, public clarity becomes essential. But here's the problem. Opening that door doesn't just answer questions. It creates new ones, bigger ones, riskier ones. Questions that don't just focus on one branch of the family, but ripple outward, touching everything. And that's exactly what some fear, that this isn't just a story, it's a trigger, a spark that could ignite a much wider debate about the monarchy itself. Because once public trust starts to wobble, even slightly, it doesn't take much for it to shift further. And in a system built on perception as much as reality, perception is everything. At the same time, there's a noticeable divide within how this situation is being handled or not handled. It's being suggested that King Charles is choosing restraint, avoiding escalation, keeping things contained behind closed doors. But then there's Prince William, a future king, someone whose role demands a different kind of response, a firmer stance, a clearer line. And that contrast alone is enough to keep speculation alive. Because when leadership styles differ, people start wondering which direction will ultimately define the outcome. And then comes the question of distance, not emotional distance, but geographical. The children being raised outside the UK, away from the traditional royal environment. And suddenly, people are asking whether that distance matters, whether it changes expectations, whether it reshapes what royal identity even means in a modern world. It's not just a logistical question, it's a philosophical one. And it doesn't have an easy answer. But just when it feels like the discussion has reached its peak, it shifts again, this time into something even more complex: strategy. Intent. The idea that certain narratives, certain details may not be accidental at all, that they could be part of a broader, carefully constructed approach. Some commentators are now suggesting that personal details shared publicly, whether in interviews, media appearances, or even memoirs, might serve a purpose beyond storytelling, that they could be positioning, preparation, even protection. And while these claims remain unverified, the fact that they're being seriously considered shows just how far this conversation has moved from where it started. Because now it's not just about what's being said, it's about why it's being said and when. And the silence from official channels? It's not shutting anything down. If anything, it's amplifying everything. Because silence in a situation like this doesn't feel neutral. It feels loaded. It invites interpretation. It encourages speculation. It turns absence into meaning. Meanwhile, the media landscape surrounding this story is becoming just as intense as the story itself. Competing narratives, conflicting portrayals. Some outlets framing this as overblown controversy, others pushing it as a legitimate concern. And in the middle of it all, the public is left trying to piece together what's real, what's exaggerated, and what's deliberately being emphasized or ignored. There's also growing frustration over how certain narratives are being shaped. Critics are calling out what they see as selective framing, suggesting that some coverage leans too heavily in one direction while overlooking key context. And that adds another layer of tension, because now it's not just about the story, it's about who controls the story. And at the center of everything remains a single, unresolved reality. uncertainty. Nothing has been definitively confirmed. Nothing has been definitively denied. The positions in the royal line remain unchanged. The official records remain in place. And yet, the questions haven't slowed down. If anything, they've accelerated. Because this is no longer just a moment, it's a pattern. A cycle of claim, reaction, silence, and then more questions. And the most unsettling part? Every time it feels like the story might settle, something new surfaces. Another detail, another perspective, another contradiction, pulling everything back into focus again. So now the question isn't just what's true, it's what comes next. Because if this continues and all signs suggest it will, then this isn't just a controversy. It's a developing situation, one that's still unfolding, one that hasn't reached its conclusion. And maybe that's what makes it impossible to look away.